Hey, Michelle, thanks for being on the show with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, before we dive in too much, why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you do, a bit of your story?
I've lived a long time, so that could be a long one. So I'll give you the bullet points. Um, I have been an entrepreneur since I was like six, right? Like
Wow.
I'm one of those people that was just hustling and bustling when I was little. We could go into what are the reasons for that, and I don't really know. I've studied entrepreneurship for so long that I can't figure out what makes some people go that route and others not. However, one of the things that I've done as part of my whole career now for, 40 something years is I've done a lot of coaching. And as part of that, you coach people who are in corporate, who are starting entrepreneurial journeys, who are chiropractors and have service professionals, right? The whole gamut. So I have experience everywhere. I've done consulting. I am co-founder of a publishing company, one of my many ventures, but a very solid, like grounded venture. And so we have 120 books or so published, which is super cool.
Wow.
And so I talk with everybody about book publishing, how to get your message out, how to live authentically, how to lead from authentic, purposeful place. And all of that is in my coaching, both for corporate and entrepreneurs and so forth. And I live in the mountains with 40 goldfish in my family. How's that? That's a bullet point.
Whoa. Yeah, you've definitely given me a lot of threads to follow.
Okay, good.
But let me start with this. You say that so much of your career has involved coaching.
Yeah.
What's your definition of coaching?
Yeah, a great question because I've been an entrepreneur, I've been always a leader, right? You either
Hmm.
lead your clients, you lead your team, back then they were called employees, right? It shows you how long I've been doing this. Now it's team and there's, much more inclusive um, titles, but it's the same thing. Like we're all on a team. How do you lead your team? But you also have to lead your clients. You have to lead them into purchasing the right product or service for you, into what is right for them. And if they get upset or if they're happy, you lead them along the journey for client satisfaction, right? So I just see that as coaching. It is when you're leading a team, you're doing a lot of coaching. And so I guess my definition of coaching, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, is really 90% listening.
Uh, it is funny when you get two coaches talking to each other, it can seem like a race to who can listen the most. Because I tend to do the listening, but I'm glad to be asking these questions too. When you say it's about leading teams, leading customers, clients through a decision, what about that when you call it coaching? How is coaching them through that different from other approaches?
So I think the old fashioned way is you tell people what to do.
Hmm.
And in the old consulting model, you told people what to do. And the old boss model, you just told people what to do. And, it doesn't fly anymore, right?
Hmm.
And I think even with customers, you used to tell them, buy this and you'll get this result. Just give me your credit card. And it's like the whole closing thing for anyone who's been in sales. It used to be like, get all your objections out up front, and here's your pat answer for the objection. And it was very um, blueprint and
Hmm.
follow this model and do this, do this, do this, and you'll be successful. And to some extent that works. However, as humanity, as people, I think we've evolved. We're better at listening to our own intuition. We're better at knowing what's good for us, and we don't like to be bamboozled or pushed.
Hmm.
So whether you're talking about clients or team or kids or whomever, if you ask the right questions, does this feel right to you? Given a choice, which would you prefer? How would you handle this? What would make this a win for you? Those kinds of questions. It opens it up for dialogue, and it also honors where the other person is and what decision they really need to make in their life to move forward in the right way. That's
Mm,
not always easy because sometimes what you know that's right for you isn't always the easiest answer.
mm. Could you give an example of what that might look like?
Well, the obvious one is if you have to let somebody go at
Uh,
work, right? You know it's the right thing to do. If you have any humanity, you're awake at night, you know,
mm,
worrying about it. And usually the other person knows when it's time to, right?
mm,
Especially in a corporate or a business environment where there's been open dialogue, both parties probably know when it's time. And I think a good time when coaching, rather than just like come in my office, you're fired. That approach isn't very humane anymore. Some coaching of, we wish this would have worked out better. Tell me what you think went right, what went wrong, and giving the other person the opportunity to speak can go a long way.
mm. I see. We talk about this being a old school versus new school approach. Could it also be just differences in personality and approach? Because some people may feel like the way to get over a hard decision is to turn off my emotions so I can just get through this, and it comes off as cold and all that. In the example of laying someone off, how do we get that kind of personality to see the benefits of a softer coaching approach?
I think that's a great question. And those kinds of questions I wrestle with all the time. And I wonder if it's generational more than
Mm,
personality.
mm,
I don't know the answer. I do know that most people who are older have a different approach because of maybe what they're used to and what they were taught and how they were brought up. But I have a team and I have clients, all generations.
mm.
And and I've got two teenagers still living with me. And
Oh,
so it is like I just don't think young people are putting up with it.
mm,
Like they're just, and so that old school, like, just do what I say, here's what you have to do. Like younger people aren't in for that. That's what I am seeing out in the world. And so
mm,
there has to be some compassion. And so someone, whether it's personality or generational or what they've been taught or what's coming from the top down, do it my way or the highway, I just don't think works that well anymore. Because I
mm,
think younger people are more like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go remote work from Costa Rica. See you. Like there's too many other options.
mm.
And and the promise, so my husband stayed at the same job for 40 years, right? And that's
Wow.
really unusual. That is
Mm,
like super unusual. And I don't think most people expect that or see that anymore. My neighbor just got laid off after being with the same company for 30 years.
wow.
No, nothing. No golden handshake, no watch, no nothing,
Right.
right? And I think we all, if we're paying any attention, recognize that that's more the norm than retiring from a place. And so, if, you come down on someone hard these days, or if someone's not happy, there's other options and they're just out because they don't see any long term benefit usually with the company anymore. Now, this is all my subjective view on
Sure.
the world, right? And as a leader, I often have to have hard conversations. And I find those hard conversations aren't easier for me, but just better received if I can take a breath, be honest, and just say what's on my mind
Mm,
without, it's not easy,
yeah.
it's not easier for me. Um, it leaves some room for other people to digest and think and give input. Doesn't mean I have to listen to it, or it doesn't mean I have to take it. I try to listen. But when other people have a chance to be part of the conversation, I think it goes a long way to building team.
Absolutely. My wife Miranda and I, we've done a season on the show talking about our personal core values, and one of hers is loyalty. And in that episode, we were talking about what you're bringing up here is there's a difference now in the workplace that we may be speaking past each other and expecting loyalty from one party without being willing to give it as well. So I see you nodding your head. Why don't you give me some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I love your wife already. Loyalty's big for me. Now,
Mm.
I think part of that's my age, part of that's my like star sign and astrological and human
Oh,
design and all the
mm,
things, right? If you want to go down the woo path. Um, and I'm the year of the dog and all the stuff, right?
mm,
I'm like a loyal person and I expect loyalty. Um, from my team. And I get upset when my clients go elsewhere. I take it personally
mm,
because loyalty is a big thing for me. So I'm like, why did they go elsewhere? What's going on? Like, didn't weren't we good enough or what was it? Why would you think about going elsewhere? And sometimes it's just we just did,
mm-hmm,
right? Um, and I think I expect a lot of loyalty and I don't always get it. And that's because I think that's sometimes personality.
okay.
Right? I do think sometimes that's just personality. Like, um, clients just going elsewhere because they just reshopped,
Mm,
right? Chose someone else this time and I wasn't in the list this time or whatever. However, if um, I just keep going back to listening, opening dialogue, being available, being authentic and transparent. Those are such buzzwords right now.
mm,
I think it invites loyalty on both sides. It invites trust. Isn't that really what loyalty is? There's got to
mm.
be a level of trust in there.
Well, absolutely. I think some of the things that need to be said, they're hard to say, and it can be dangerous to try to say them without a deeper understanding between two people or within a group that it won't be threatening, or at the very least, if it is challenging, it won't be deadly. And it takes a lot of work to realize that.
So I want to take a little tangent here. I think when you have a level of trust and you're open and your team or your staff or your clients are willing to talk with you and you are there with an open ear, you're going to get an earful. And I think as a leader, you have to just take it in and let it go and not be triggered. As leaders, we have to take the high road. My daughter as a teenager yelled at me a lot. And I could choose to be triggered by that and yell back, or take a breath and take the high road and be the adult in the room, right? And I think there's something to be said as a leader in a company too. You have to take a breath, listen to what they're saying, and then take it in or not, but don't get triggered and don't react to it. And as leaders, I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that we're going to get, if we have open ears and we're leading from an open place and an authentic place and a trusting place, that people are going to feel free to give us that feedback. And they're going to say, I'm so glad you asked, Michelle. This is what I really think. And then sometimes it's like, right? And
Yeah.
where you were talking about, it's not always easy. It is not always easy. And you do have to take a breath and say, thank you. I will take that into consideration. Thank you.
Mm,
I hear you. Thank you for that feedback. I'm going to ponder it for a couple of days before I respond.
yeah. One
Those
of
are
the
those are responses I've had to learn.
right. Well,
Right?
precisely. That does take practice, huh? One of the
Yeah.
things I've observed in an organization, someone with responsibilities to others, leaders, they can say, you're right, Michelle. I want to be trusting, want others to trust me. I want to have access to that feedback or whatever information it is that others have to give me, because in there's going to be the information I need to make better changes to get better outcomes. But it can come off as heavy and prickly, and I don't know what to do about it, and I can't go back and talk to them about it, and I have a reputation to uphold within the organization, so who do I turn to? And that to me is a great spot for coaches to be.
Yeah.
Why don't you speak to me more on that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. We all need, I think, people to bounce ideas off of, frustrations off of, thoughts that is not your partner in life
Mm,
or your other team members, right? You need an outside person, a coach. It used to be more therapists, but a coach is a great person to bounce things off of, to say, am I overreacting? This person told me this today and it made me so mad, and I had to bite my tongue and swallow my pride and go, run for 2 miles just to let it out. And in my case, probably eat a box of cookies or something too, right? and and you know, it's good to have someone to bounce that off of, because they can give you perspective. Yes, I can see how you'd feel that way. Probably, usually, your feelings are valid too. My feelings are valid. If people are giving me feedback that I don't like and I'm triggered by it or I'm upset, that's valid too. But it doesn't mean I'm reacting. It means I choose my response. I choose a measured response because I'm a leader. And so having an outside coach to help you work through that, to think about it, to see what's valid, what's valid, to have a sounding board is so important. So, I think it makes a huge difference. And
mm,
most of the successful people I know in business and in corporate, and my husband, all have had mentors or sounding boards or coaches or somebody to talk to that gives an outside opinion that isn't afraid to tell you how it is, but in a nice way, in a loving, nice way,
sure.
usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when we have that relationship of trust, we can talk about those challenging ideas in a way that's not received in a challenging way necessarily.
Right. And the more open we are as leaders, tell me if you agree with this, but I think the more open we are, the more willing we are to get feedback, the
Mm,
more brutal some of that feedback is going to come.
mm,
Because, the world isn't always a safe place. So when you find somebody safe to talk to, you're going to give it to them.
yeah.
And so that's kind of what I see. So, going back to my daughter when she was a teenager, she's right on the edge now. I was a pretty safe place when she was 14, 15, 16. So I got it. Like it
Mm,
came at me, right? Because
mm,
she knew I was safe. So I got it all. I got the full gamut of
mm,
teenage rage, right? Um, and I think that's probably healthy, because then I could like not react, not beat her, kick her out of the house, do all those kinds of things, take a breath, and then when she got it all out, we'd sit down and talk about it. Say, okay, what's really going on here? Right? But if I was in a safe place, we'd never have that place to be able to go to the next step. I never would have really heard what was going on. So I
mm,
use that as an example, but I think that's true everywhere. If clients feel safe enough to tell you what they love and what they don't love and what's working and what's not working, it gives you the opportunity, let's use some buzzwords here, to upsell, to
mm,
do an extended contract, to do the extended warranty, whatever, right?
mm.
But the client has to feel comfortable and safe enough with you to be able to share what's really going on. So if they're not happy, you know why. Or if they have concerns, you know why. But then you're going to hear them.
Yeah. Let's take that back. You had mentioned that in your business, you have people of all generations working with you. What have you learned in that environment, speaking cross generationally?
So, can I get real here for a minute
That's what
without
we're here
being?
for. Yeah.
So, and I think part of this is being, older. I'm in my 60s and I have, 20-year-old at home basically. Um, Before COVID, I don't think I really ever heard of a pronoun they,
Okay. Yeah. Huh.
right?
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that's just one small example, right?
Mhm.
Um, I've always worked remotely because I've always had clients everywhere. So it's not the remote work so much, but there is something about coming and going. I need a mental health day. I'm just going to take off the next 3 hours because I need a break. Those things are kind of new for me and
Hmm.
more younger, definitely younger than I am, right? And so again, I listen, I watch what's going on, I try to be really aware of what's going on out there in the world. And I'm like, okay, take a break. That's what you need, take a break. So I'm not sure I have an answer, but I think as I'm talking this out with you, I think part of it is that I trust my staff
Hmm.
implicitly to get their work done, to do what they need to do to take care of themselves. I'm not their mother, I'm not their babysitter, right? So
Hmm.
part of that's my style. Part of it is that we have a business that has proven itself that if you take 3 hours off, the place is not going to fall apart. It's still going to be here tomorrow, and the work will still be there tomorrow. And we have a team that has each other's back. So if there's something that has to be done, someone else will get it. You can ask someone else to do it. We don't have the thing, at least in my business, um, where you would say, oh, that's not my job description. And I think that's more
Huh.
in corporate. So I'd be interested in kind of talking that through a little bit because that feels a little bit more generational. Like younger
Hmm.
people, I think, might say that more than older people.
Hmm. Tell me more. What have you seen about that?
It's more what I notice online or what I hear my daughter say.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm not getting paid for that. That's not in my job description. Oh, you need to pay me extra for that. And, it's not something I have heard or seen that much until more recently, the last few years.
Hmm. What was the previous attitude towards that, would you say? How does it compare?
Well, I think boomers and Gen Xers kind of do what they need to do to get the job done.
Hmm.
And they expect that from other people too. And that's kind of the loyalty thing too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I'm not asking anyone to clean toilets, but if someone has to run to the post office, someone has to run to the post office, right?
Sure.
Um, and there just seems to be a little more of an attitude now, like, no, I'm not doing it. So I don't know if that's true. If you run
Yeah.
across it, I just see it more than I used to.
Hmm. Well, I think that's very interesting because while we do see the older generations have that sort of attitude of go along to get along, like do what you have to support the organization. I feel like perhaps the pendulum swinging the other way is an attempt to be healthier in one's boundaries, but
Yeah.
maybe perhaps swinging too far at times, being unpracticed in how that comes across and it deteriorating relationships rather than build them.
Well, you'd never ask a Gen Zer to go work 60 hours a week for a 40-hour paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's not happening. And that happened with boomers all the time, right? I mean, that's that's just not happening. And that's a good thing, right? That even as an employer and as a leader, that's a good thing. That's healthy boundaries that you're talking about. And that's lifestyle balance. And that's like, let's get our lives back. We're not here to work ourselves to death. We're here to live our purpose, to express, to be better people, to help humanity, like all the stuff. And so I think there's a place of, I don't think this is my expertise and it would be better going to another team member. Might be just a nicer way to talk about it rather than, no, I'm not going to do that. It's outside of my job description.
Mm,
I mean, I don't have that, but I've heard that in my coaching that other people
sure.
have had that come up.
Yeah. One of the things that I really enjoy helping my coachees with is using a strengths based philosophy. We use Clifton Strengths, which
Yep.
helps people identify their personal strengths, their talents, that not only are they good at it, but they really get energy from using these particular themes every day. And it helps them when you get a team together who have a knowledge of their strengths, then you start to see a lot of just natural ideas and collaboration that reorganize tasks and roles in an organic way. Because there can be some people where there's all the work that needs to get done, so we're going to split it up evenly, right? That's the fair way to do it. But then you find one person cannot stand doing sitting in front of the computer. They'd rather be going and talking to someone. And then his coworker cannot bring himself to start to initiate conversations.
Right.
He'd rather be the one doing the analysis, working on the computer. What's the harm in trying to swap things around and see who can specialize in particular tasks rather than a, a more basic approach to task delegation?
Yeah, absolutely. And in a smaller company, that's so easy to do,
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last thing you want is somebody not working from their strengths, because when you're working from your strengths, you're going to have passion and purpose. You're going to feel better about your job. You're going to love what you do. Now, we all have to do some things we don't like.
Hmm.
That's just part of life. But if using the 80/20 rule, if you're 80% doing what you're good at, that's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I believe I saw a study from Gallup, who handles Clifton Strengths, where they said that if even you can be spending 20% of your time using your strengths, you can have on your back 80% of the things that you tolerate, and you still feel fulfilled. So
Wow.
it really is quite a powerful thing to be able to do in identifying your strengths and using them every single day. But what I want to ask you is in regards to, we talk about people wanting to set boundaries, people wanting to say it, this is just a job, it's not my life. How much of that have you seen is connected to not having a clearly defined purpose in one's work?
I think it's everything. I think it's everything. Now, I talk a lot about purpose in my work, and whatever you want to call it, being authentic, being aligned. There's so many buzzwords, but it's all the same thing, really, which is waking up in the morning and feeling like you're doing what you're here to do on the planet, right? Um, I guess I got to go backwards for a minute. If you're a natural caregiver and that's part of who you are, you may be brought up and kind of conditioned to think you have to be a nurse, for instance, out in
Hmm.
the world. But actually, if you're a natural caregiver and you bring that to your corporate work, you can feel very fulfilled if you have a place to put that out in the workplace where it's accepted, right?
Hmm.
You're the person that brings the donuts to work, or you're the person that makes sure there's happy birthdays every month, or something like that. If that's your natural way of being in the world, you can find that in any profession. So, profession is not a purpose. It's up to you to tap in to what those things really are. And they tend to be verbs, not nouns. So, it's not being a
Hmm.
nurse or being a cop or being a coach or being a programmer. It's what's underneath that. What is the verb underneath that? I like to help people. I like to connect with people. I like to lead. I like to manage. I like to care give. I like to figure stuff out. I like numbers because I like to see the graphs and the accounting or whatever it is, right? So go to find the verb underneath that noun. If that makes sense. Find the
Hmm.
action thing. Find the way that you express yourself in the world most of the time, right? So not all the time. We can't be leaders 100% of the time. We all have use that 80/20 rule. But if you were plopped somewhere in the middle of a strange city and had to make a life, how would you do that? Would you start networking? Would you be out there in the world? Would you try to find a remote job and stay behind the computer? Would you volunteer your time? Would you be at the dog park trying to make friends? Would you join a church? What are some, and then what is underneath that? Why do you choose that? Is it because you're an extrovert? You like to connect with people? Are you better with animals? Do you like elderly people, kids? All these things are clues. And then you bring that into the job you already have. It's part of Bloom where you're planted. And it doesn't mean you can't have change, but until you're grateful for where you are and you can learn to bloom where you're planted, you can move or change jobs or do something different till you're blue in the face and you're blue in the face and you're going to have that same challenge inside yourself. You're going to have that same disconnection, that same um, impatience with yourself if you haven't resolved that first. So you
I
have to have, yeah, go ahead.
I just love everything you're saying. I often say that developing this kind of self-awareness that you're talking about, that's currency, and
Yeah,
you can use that to buy a better life, a more fulfilling life. And most people are poor when it comes to that. It does take a certain amount of humility and courage to seek out greater self-awareness, because one thing I see often is we talk about conditioning, expectations set on us, and those themselves can also be clues to who we are, because people who know and love us can see the talents within us. But when we rely on just those and don't look inward ourselves and have that journey of discovery, then it can become lopsided. So, how do we take outside feedback along with what we know within ourselves to create that more fulfilled purpose in our life?
that's probably the whole life's journey there,
Mm.
Sam.
No, yeah, no small question here. Yeah.
Yeah. When I think part of it's the older we get and the more self reflection and the more input from the world around us, the better at that we get, right?
Mm.
I mean, we're all learning all the time. Often people give me outside input and I listen too much. And then a
Mm.
month later or a year later, I'm like, dang, why did I do that? I knew that wasn't right for me. I mean, I still do that. We all do that.
Mm.
But I'm better at it now than I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The more we listen to what's right for us. So, again, as a leader, when someone's blasting you with information that's a lot, or giving you feedback that's not easy to hear, or a customer saying, this is why I didn't use you again, you have to sort out, okay, listen, how much of that is true?
Mm.
Like, how much of that's true for me? Or is my customer like just really freaking difficult?
Mm.
Right? And so, yeah, that may be true, but it just wasn't a match. You need more white glove service than we could give you, or whatever, or was wrong, right? I mean, there's so many things it could be. And going back to your point, I think the more we just tune in and go, okay, there's the feedback. Is that true for me or not? Or is that the thing where you hold up the mirror and that's actually the feedback they needed for themselves?
Mm.
And then we need that for us too. So if I'm giving you feedback, like, I love that curtain behind you. Is that really feedback? Then I'm like, oh, maybe I'd like a nice curtain behind me, right? It's always like
Mm.
whatever we say is usually, it's that old thing where when you're pointing a finger, there's three fingers pointing back
Mm.
at you. Whatever comes out of your mouth is also for your own insight and awareness. We're always teaching what we need to learn. We're always learning what we need to teach. When we're giving feedback, it's for us. So
Mm.
that's the long answer to, you've got to discern when the outside world's coming in, is that true for you? Just ask, is that true for me right now?
Mm. I'll I'll laugh with you along this point that, like you're saying, being a leader requires being open to that feedback, being open to taking your own medicine, as it were. And that's just as true with coaching, because
Yeah.
it can be so easy to feel, well, here, you give me all this information. Have you thought about this? And the advice you arrive at, is the thing that you have been neglecting in your own life.
Oh, 100%. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What has coaching as a practice taught you as a leader and as a person?
I think this is actually a big philosophical question. What really helps one person change and grow and the next person doesn't budge an inch?
Hmm.
And maybe you've got some insight to that. So you sell exactly the same package, 3,000, 10,000, $100,000, whatever it is, to two different people who are seemingly alike. You coach them both. Feels like you're giving them both bespoke information specifically for them, but generally good coaching advice. And one person like takes off and changes their life, and the other person's still stuck a year later. I guess what I've learned is I don't have control over that. I
Hmm.
beat myself up over it. Sometimes I look and I can see where you actually have moved a lot, but you're not seeing it in yourself yet. Other times I'm like, why is this person just not doing what they know they need to do? Right?
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's timing. Maybe sometimes I'm just not the right coach for them. I don't
Hmm.
know. I guess I don't know is the answer.
Sure.
I don't
Well,
know what I've learned.
well, yeah, I suppose there's time left, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm
There's
still
plenty,
alive on the planet.
yeah, plenty to learn still. And that is a hard question, but I'm curious to know what you've seen client to client that has suggested what does make somebody coachable or go towards success in a coaching relationship.
Yeah. Um, I am going to go back to we teach what we need to learn, and we learn what we need to teach. And so for me, the clients I love to work with are the ones where we talk it through and then they make the right decision for them. So there may be, I'll say, well, here's a couple of things that I see. What do you see going on? Let's just say marketing, because I do a lot of business coaching. Let's just say, I don't know if this is pertinent to your audience, but I think they'll get it. Um, I want to put myself out there more. I should be on TikTok. What's threads? I'm on Facebook. I'm here, I'm there. And I'm like, let's take a breath, right? There's so much noise and busyness out there in the world. Let's take a breath and figure out what's right for you and where do you want to be. And then I had a client last week say, I just want to be on LinkedIn. And it wasn't something that we talked about. And I know you're on LinkedIn. And I'm like, perfect, fine. You're listening to yourself. Let all the rest of it go. And so I think the people that I really like to work with are the ones that are willing to kind of look at all the options and maybe something they've never thought about before, and then go with what's right for them right now.
Hmm.
What's right for you right now, what feels right. If you can really tap into that internal knowing, and that takes some time.
Hmm.
But I also think even if you tap into the internal knowing and it was wrong and you make the wrong decision, because I've had that, it doesn't matter. The universe helps you correct and get you back on the right track. It's when we don't make a decision or don't make a step that we're just stuck. So as long as you make a step, it almost doesn't matter if it's the wrong step. It'll correct itself
Hmm.
over a month, a year, a lifetime, maybe not the same day.
Sure. I love what you're saying, because the thing I found in my practice as a coach, that I've really had this drilled into me and have experienced it firsthand. There is so much power in letting someone own their decision. And when there's a trusting relationship, we can talk about things and give each other observations. But in the end, they decide, I'm going to go this direction. I'm going to do this. Like you're saying, even if it doesn't work out the way they expected, the power comes from them taking ownership.
Right.
Why don't you tell me more about what that sense of ownership does for a coachee?
Well, I can give you good examples because I'm a book coach, right? I own a publishing company. I have helped tons of people write books. And what comes up on nonfiction books, right? Legacy books, business books. Here's how you do XYZ to go market yourself, whatever, but nonfiction books. And what always comes up is authors are often afraid to say what they really want to say. They're not really willing to put their stake in the sand for what you really believe in, and too scared of muddying the water or being too controversial or putting something out on paper, that's out there in print for, all eternity that someone's going to come back and point the finger at them for.
Mm,
And what I say is you have to be brave. And the process of writing a book is going to show you where you have to be brave. It's going to show you what you really think and what you really want to say and what you really want to stand for. And if it's difficult to put it in the book, that's the place that you got to step up, right?
mm,
That's the place where you have to be, okay, this is hard for me to put in the, because if it's easy, you just write it and move on. If you're struggling with it, that's the place where the growth is.
mm,
That's the place. And I am not one about throwing anyone under the bus. If you were beaten as a kid or, had your knuckles wrapped in Catholic school or whatever, I'm not saying you have to throw anyone under the bus, but you have to wrestle with, did that affect your entrepreneurial journey? Did that affect how you're a leader out in the world? Are you afraid of speaking your mind because in Catholic school you got your knuckles wrapped, right?
mm,
So think about that and use that as a growth opportunity. And if you're struggling with writing something like every single person needs to be on LinkedIn, it's a stupid example, but you'll get it. Even if you hate it and that's what you believe, then write it freaking down. If that's what you really believe, put your stake in the sand and, write it and honor yourself for it. And forgot the question. However, there's a place where people get right up against their own edge and say, well, I don't want to write that down. I'm afraid that people aren't going to understand what I'm saying there. I'm afraid they're going to call me out on it and I'm going to get, crucified online. And I'm like, well, there's your growth edge.
mm. What consequences have you seen of people choosing not to be brave?
Well, I think for myself, when I stay in my comfort zone, I'm always like, what if that? Or I wish I would have gone for that. Or I wish I would have tried it, right? As you said, there's time left. We're all still alive on the planet. It's not it's not ever anything that you can't go redo. But if you, using the book example, publish a book and you didn't lay it all out there, then you got to go write another book to fix it. It's a lot of work, right? Or do a podcast or do something else, right? To further your own work. Um, I think people just feel stuck and they don't feel fulfilled. I don't think it's any big thing. I don't think it's like, I mean, maybe they're leaving millions on the table, or maybe they didn't get the promotion at work or whatever. But for the most part, I think it's just a feeling of unfulfilled and I'm not living my purpose and doing what I'm here to do. And you're just left with, well, this is life, rather than a feeling of waking up and this is life. It's a big adventure. What are we going to go do tomorrow in this
Right.
big adventure together?
Well, and that's the question everyone has to answer is what's the value of that, of being
Yeah,
able to say and get up every morning and be excited to be about your work.
yeah.
Wow. this being the Courage Coach for Executives podcast, courage is our one word. We had mentioned bravery just briefly earlier, but tell me, what does courage mean to you?
Well, for me in my work, it really is about making sure I'm not reactive because there's a million places for me to get reactive every day. Leading team with clients, with authors who are stuck in their book, with Amazon, bless its heart, screwing up a book. I mean, really, Amazon occasionally will just send out blank books with nothing printed inside, right? I mean, it happens. And who gets the blame, right? Who
Right.
does the author call? Me. I'm like, it's Amazon, right? So I think for me to have courage in my everyday work, it's really to take a breath, listen, and not take it personally.
Hmm.
I can't take any of this personally. I got work to do on the planet. I almost said a different word. I have work to do. I have things that I want to get done. I have people to lead, books to publish, people to coach. I don't have time to be triggered by every little thing out there.
Hmm.
And so for me, that's courage. And to get up every morning and just keep going regardless of what's going on, regardless of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, having a family, having teenagers in the house, right? All of the other stuff that goes on with living a life, all the personal stuff, all the heartbreak, all people getting married and dying and all the stuff. It takes a lot of courage to go out there and be an adult in today's world. And no matter how old you are, you got to have courage just to get up and keep doing
Hmm. I'll ask this as someone who is not as wise as you.
it.
Does courage get easier with age?
No, it doesn't.
Hmm.
Because as you get older, more people die and get sick, and there's more heartbreak around you.
Hmm.
What does happen is you keep it in perspective.
Hmm.
You start to see it's the ebb and flow of life. I mean, I look at my dad who's 90 and
Hmm.
is kind of the last one standing, right?
Yeah.
In his circle. And I can't imagine what he's gone through in the last 15 years watching all these people. My mom, we were married 60 years, right? All of it, right? So I don't think it gets easier. I think perspective gets bigger.
Hmm.
And gratitude for every day. Every day I'm telling my husband, we are so lucky. Look out the window. You're so lucky, right?
Hmm.
You get more gratitude. I think if you're lucky, you have more gratitude as you get older.
Hmm. Okay. So let's encapsulate that. If you could hand down some advice to us millennials or Gen Z, even Gen X, what what does it take? What can we do to practice gaining perspective and choosing gratitude each day?
Well, I want to also answer it a different way. Number
Okay.
one, Gen Zs, you got stuff to go do in the world. Go clean up this mess, please.
Hmm.
We need you, right? So hands off to Gen Zs. Keep your freaking boundaries. Take your mental health day and go fix this world. So I'm going
Hmm.
to say that. In terms of perspective, for all of us, we need to have a purpose in life. We need to have something that pulls us forward. We need to know that we're alive on the planet just because we are, and that's enough. And now go express yourself in a way that helps the planet. Go pet a dog, smile at somebody, start easy, start simple, smile at the grocery store more, whatever it is, and then move into that so you're expressing yourself in a way that actually ripples out and makes a difference
Hmm.
because we all need that. And then just keep doing that from a place of love, not from a place of ego, like, oh my gosh, I'm making such a difference, but a place of love and groundedness. And that, I think, gives you gratitude and perspective.
Hmm.
And we all have a lifetime. So if we get it wrong today, we can try again tomorrow.
Michelle, let me speak as one who has a lot going on, let's say, and is feels like they are in the thick of thin things or just neck deep in all the world's troubles, do you really believe the advice you just gave?
Um, that we need to go do what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
That advice.
Yeah.
I think it's the only thing that pulls us forward. Adulting's hard.
Mm.
If you don't have a purpose, I mean, there are days I'm surprised I'm not, curled up in a ball in the corner, right? I mean, I don't want to call out my personal life too much, but I got a family with issues and health issues and myself and team and right the whole thing. And the world's going through a lot of changes and it's like 100 degrees here and no air conditioning and all the stuff because it's different than it was a decade ago, right?
Mm.
Um, everybody's under so much pressure. The only thing that's going to carry us all forward is you've got to have a sense, and we haven't talked, spirituality at all, but you've got to have a sense of belonging, of where you are in the world, of how you fit. And if you don't know that, just have something that pulls you forward every day. Something. So you get out of bed and you make a difference. Yes, I believe that advice because otherwise, what's the point?
Mm. I'm inclined to agree myself. I think so much of what life requires of us is courage, faith, a sense of connection to something bigger. And that's going to be the thing that helps us get through those thin times, those lean times in life. But let me ask you, Michelle, is there anything else to wrap up this conversation that you feel needs to be said?
Well, I think you're incredibly wise. So I hear it in your questions. So thank you. Um, these were tougher questions than I'm usually asked. And so I had to kind of think on my feet a little bit. And I appreciate that. And thank you. And I just want to say that it's the last, I used to say in coaching to my clients like 2016, wow, this was a tough year. Next year's going to get better. 2017, wow, that was kind of a crazy year, wasn't it? I'm sure the next couple of years are going to get better. And it does kind of feel like we're lobsters being boiled alive, right? It's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, not just in the climate out there, but just on the planet. It's so intense. Um, just, it's okay. You're not alone, everybody. You're here for a reason. We're all going to make a difference. We're going to be okay. Be grateful, smile more, love more, do what you can, and don't beat yourself up. That's what I want to leave everybody with. Give
Thank you.
yourself some grace.
Yeah. Michelle, how can people connect with you?
Thank you. They can find me on my website, michellevandepas.com, or find me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook. Not so much on LinkedIn. I'm going to have to come find you.
Sure. Happy to share all the mistakes I've made along the way. Help
Okay.
you out. But
Yeah.
we'll make sure to have some links of yours in the show notes. But we'll wrap this up. I'm Sam, the Courage Coach for Executives. Remember, it starts with you.